right, so welcome everyone to our NutraStrong podcast, Campfire Nutrition. We're delighted today to be joined by a very special guest, Howard Schiffer, President, CEO, and founder of Vitamin Angels, a not-for-profit well known in our nutrition industry, but we're always trying to raise the profile of organizations within our industry to the broader nutritional consumer audience as well. So Howard, thank you so much for taking some time and joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Wonderful. So Howard, many of us know the story of Vitamin Angels and your story, but for the greater audience out there, tell us a bit about yourself and then Vitamin Angels and how it all got going and started.
Well, Vitamin Angels was started at a time in my life. I'd been in the industry for about 14 years. I was a vendor. I was creating some supplement brands. I'll kind of back up into the longer story in a bit, but I was trying to come up with products that already had a little bit of a marketing push behind them because we were a new organization. So when lysine hit the market and Saturday Evening Post was running stories almost every month on lysine to treat herpes simplex, we came out with one of the first lysine creams. And when George Eby did the research at the University of Texas on zinc stopping viruses, we came out with one of the first zinc lozenges. So I was enjoying it, and I got involved in the industry when it was really in its infancy. When people sometimes would show up at shows. I mean, the shows were literally one hall big. They were small. People were sharing booths. People were sometimes walking around with pyramids on their heads and, meditating in the aisles. And it was pretty casual and it was exciting. I mean, it was before Whole Foods was a nationwide chain. It was right when there was a transition really from the mom and pop pill stores to a full service industry. I mean, when HABA came on board, when there was frozen, when there were complete, divisions within stores, where produce counter, produce obviously, but also meat and fish and, full supplement and lotions. And I mean, it became a full grocery. And it was exciting and it was really fun. And it became a business. It became a very big business. And I remember the transition during certain shows every year when we realized that there were more private equity people and venture capitalists and bankers that were coming to visit all the booths than there were retailers. I mean, that it really was this big, big shift that there was, people started to realize that there was a lot of growth potential, a lot of money in the industry. And honestly, I just got bored. I got to a point where it wasn't as much fun. I was always trying to figure out what the next top product was going to be, or what the next big trend was going to be, or how we were going to make this month's sales goals. And after about 14 years, I started thinking I need to do something else. My kids were also preteen, but I knew they were going to start, really looking at what they wanted to do. And the passion that drove me into the industry was kind of dissipating. And my wife is very much, she's a chef and she is very into food and nutrition and cooking. And I'd see her come home from the Saturday market just on fire, excited and, look at these vegetables. And she talked to these farmers. I mean, there was just a lot of energy. And I realized that mine was kind of, going in the opposite direction. And I kept thinking, I know all of these people. I knew I had manufactured, I had been the vendor, I had been, dealt with distributors, I knew the retail, I knew all the different components in the industry. And I kept thinking I should be able to do something with that. And in '94, there was an earthquake in Southern California, the Northridge earthquake. And one of the relief groups in town called this company that I owned, that I was a partner in, for some supplements. A lot of the migrant workers, the farm workers, had lost their homes, in Southern California. And they were living in tents. They were stressed out. They were not eating. They're not sleeping. And this relief group was worried that the kids were going to get sick, and there could even be a, epidemic or some kind of sickness breaking out. And they asked me for some supplements. And the product that I had at that time was a powder that you shaked in juice to make a multiple vitamin drink. And I said, it's really not applicable in an emergency. It's just going to be too complicated. But let me make a call. And again, I knew a lot of people. So I called up Eddie Davis, who was my friend, who ran Nutrition Headquarters, which was the biggest mail order company in the country at that time. I mean, they used to ship out about 10,000 packages a day. And I told Ed, I said, Ed, hey, there was an earthquake. And he said, oh, I just saw it on TV. I was going to make a donation to the Red Cross. And I said, well, this group in Santa Barbara just called up and they need supplements. And he said, well, let me see what I could do. And I forgot about it, went back to work. And 3 days later, the woman who had called us from the relief group, Ellen Engelman, calls back and she's just bursting, excited. Just, this is amazing. We've never had you do this. And I found out that a truck had come up to their loading dock and unloaded 3 pallets of vitamins. And they were thrilled. They were just so happy. And we talked a little bit. And I said, Ellen, after the dust settles, after you get done with the relief effort, we should talk because I know a lot of people. And we got together in their offices about 3 weeks later. And I said, look, I know all the people that manufacture vitamins. I know all the people that sell vitamins, that distribute vitamins. I could probably get them for you if you tell me what you need. And of course, they said, well, we need everything. Yeah. And I said, well, okay, yeah, well, but what? And they said, well, we need children's multiples and we need adult multiples and we need C. And, they went on and on. And I said, well, I could probably help do that. And in that meeting, actually, this other pivotal thing happened, which is I said, what else is possible? And they said, well, if you can get us high dose vitamin A, we could prevent children from going blind. And I've been in the industry now for 14 years. I was taking a handful of supplements myself every day. I mean, I believed in supplements, but I never heard of anybody getting cured from going blind. I mean, that was a little bit of a stretch, a lot of a stretch. And I actually left the meeting, didn't believe it, and went and did the research, and sure enough found Al Summers from Johns Hopkins had done this work, and vitamin A deficiency childhood blindness affects about 500,000 children a year, and 2 doses a year could prevent a child from going blind. But that was the turning point, and it was kind of like the door opened up, and I thought, okay, I could do this, and I formed a very lean organization and started just telling people, hey, I found a way to get some supplements out to people, and immediately the industry was really responsive. Oh, great, we've been wanting to do that. We didn't know how to do it. And so it just took off from day one.
Wow. And obviously this started within the continental US in response to one specific incident, an earthquake. Then how did it build? What were the first group of countries you went into? How did it get to so many countries? That's what's so interesting, amongst other things, is the breadth and depth of the countries that are now serviced by Vitamin Angels. How does
as I said, I didn't have a lot of capital. I didn't have the credentials. I didn't have any celebrity endorsements. So the only way to keep Vitamin Angels going was to have it be really lean and mean. I mean, to really kind of scale it to a very bare bones operation. So literally, the first office we had was 2 file drawers in my home upstairs, and we would get the vitamins donated, and then I would contact like the relief group that initially contacted me and say, well, I've gotten, Now Foods or Fruitful Yield up in Chicago told me they have a lot of vitamin C that they would be willing to donate. Can you use it? And they say, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, well, here, tell me where to get it shipped to, and we'll ship it to you. And then the relief group would tell me, oh, we got it to Honduras this month. We got it to Guatemala this month. We sent some to India. So they would send me the reports, and then I would send the reports out to all the different donors that we got in the industry. So wherever they were going, so the product was donated. I didn't get a paycheck. I didn't get any money or perks for the first 10 years. It was all volunteer. The partner organizations were covering all the shipping expenses. And then they started introducing us to all the in-country partners that would cover all the distribution costs. So it was a very, very efficient way to do it. I mean, it actually became a model that became one of our core competencies. At the time, it was honestly just built out of complete necessity. I couldn't have done it any other way, but it worked really well. And then the different groups that we would start working with, when I found out, when I first heard about, first with the Northridge earthquake, but then later on, my assumption was that, the group that had contacted me was medical relief. So they did suture, bandages, antibiotics, medical equipment. And I thought, well, it makes sense. They might not have supplements. But what I came to realize was that even UNICEF, even Save the Children, had no consistent high quality supply that they could count on. What they would get is they would get one-offs. Like somebody would call up and say, well, I have 1,000 boxes of a multiple adult vitamin. And they would go, great. But then once that was gone, it was gone. And so there was no way to build a program. You could do a distribution, but you couldn't really get a program going where you knew you had a reliable source that was good quality, that was going to show up on time, and that was going to keep going, that was going to be consistent. And that's really what Vitamin Angels became. And so all of the relief groups that we contacted were just thrilled. And whether they were building houses or digging wells or doing education work or doing medical relief, everybody knew that nutrition was central. Everybody realized that if you're going to get anything going, nutrition and water, those were like the basics. You had to get that going, or else you were not going to really be able to improve things. And so we became very popular very fast, and people started spreading the word. And then people started contacting us and say, well, can you get vitamins to Malawi? And we'd say, well, we look for somebody that was working in Malawi. And then we vet the organization that had contacted us and made sure that they were on the up and up. And we'd send them a small shipment and see how they did. And then if they did, we'd kind of up it a little bit at a time. But we just started building, the first, probably few years, we would have like a dozen and then 2 dozen, then, countries, and it just kept building. Now I think this year it's 70 countries around the world in every state in the United States. So it kept building because the need was so great. And today, malnutrition accounts for about half, either directly or indirectly, of half of all childhood deaths. For the children under 5, that's who's most vulnerable. And so it's a cornerstone. It's a cornerstone. In fact, the World Bank, which are largely, almost all economists, they did a study. They're always advising international organizations, but also countries, on where they should put their resources to create the most change. And in 2004, 8, and 12, they decided to do a study to convene 50 of the world's top economists, a lot, like 5 Nobel laureates, very esteemed panel, and nutritionists, to look at the biggest problems that the world is facing. So, AIDS, TB, malaria, cancer, sanitation, and direct countries and organizations where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, where you could really help save lives. And every time they did it, every single time, number one on the list was, micronutrients, vitamins. And I mean, every time, and the quote at the beginning of their book that came out, which the book, I mean, this is from World Bank. The book was reinvesting nutrition as central to development. And the quote at the beginning was that investments in nutrition have higher returns than investments in trade liberalization, in water, or even in sanitation. They said no other technology besides vitamins offers as large a return in such a short time. You know, and I would hear that, and I buy, you know, dozens of copies for the books, and I go around to everybody at the shows and say, look at this, look, you know, look at everybody, this is your product. I mean, there was this big, and still is this big disconnect that people don't realize that nutrition and supplements are a part of public health. They think it's like for optimal health, or I'll use it to just kind of get rid of this problem or to perform at a higher level. But if you work in the public health world, I mean, Johns Hopkins, which is, you know, I mean, that's where everybody got their information from during COVID, right? I mean, one of the most reputable public health institutions in the world. They have a school that's devoted to micronutrients, a whole school that's what they do. So it's, if you're working in the field, I mean, if you're out there with mothers and children, whether it's US or anywhere in the world, you realize that nutrition it's a foundation. It's where you start.
Right. It's fundamental for life, right? And essential for life.
It's fundamental. And I mean, what's interesting to me is that when Vitamin Angels, and even to this day, to a certain degree, is that I think people in the industry sometimes get so focused on their product or their, you know, what they're trying to sell, that they don't look at the bigger picture, which is that nutrition is, I mean, it should be part of every conversation. We're now getting involved with, you know, ESG has gotten a lot of play in the industry. It's gotten a little bit of a bad rap in the last year because people have been abusing it. But the purpose was to try to focus, you know, the businesses on social action and social change, you know, when they said environment, social, and governance.
Yes.
Vitamin Angels has been saying, and I've somebody that's working on this full time now, what about nutrition? Nutrition should be a part of that conversation. Nutrition saves more lives and has a bigger impact, you know, and why isn't nutrition one of the metrics that's being measured? I mean, nutrition should be part of that conversation. And all these businesses, whether you're a food company or a supplement company or a retailer, all these businesses should be pushing the folks who are running the ESG metrics to include nutrition. Nutrition is central. I mean, it's really, really central.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And then with that, when we get back to the Vitamin Angels name itself, where did that come from? Is that something that, hey, you're on the back porch one day having a coffee and you said, yes, it's Vitamin Angels? Was there big, because I think the name intuitively is very clever, completely branded on point, but tell me a bit about how that name came about and how that name's received in 70 different countries from a purely branding marketing perspective. How is it just that, hey, vitamins show up in Angola and they could care less about the name, they're just happy to get vitamins? Or how does that name translate across different markets as well?
Yeah, and it's funny, in a lot of countries, you know, we go and meet with the women and the children we're serving, and they'll hold it up, the supplement up, and they'll go, oh, we love the angels. We love the angels. And they don't even say Vitamin Angels, you just say the angels. But the name just was it just seemed obvious to me. I don't know. It was like when I was thinking about it, it was like, well, we're Vitamin Angels. I just had this picture of just kind of an angel going around to children and just, you know, with a cornucopia of just good nutrition, you know, to hand out. And it was just obvious, and it stuck right away. And, you know, we've gone around the world and wondered if there was going to be, you know, any kind of reaction to it, or people was going to think it had religious connotations. But I think people, they see what the intent is. They see that what we're trying to do, that all we're trying to do is help people. And I mean, and the truth is that there are we work internationally, and a lot of countries we go into, there will be airplanes, planes, and trucks and big offices that all are branded with whichever relief agency is there.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin Angels doesn't have that. I mean, again, because I mentioned to you that we have these partners,
Mm-hmm.
we have over 1,500 partners in these countries that are actually doing the work. They're the ones that are the stars. They speak the language, they know the customs. A lot of them grew up in the villages. So they're the ones who are trusted. They're the ones that are handing out the supplements, and we're just in the background, and that's fine with me. I mean, we did not do this, for the glory or, to have a giant brand out there. The only value for us for the brand is that it draws in more support so that we could do more work. But when it comes down to the mother and child, all we want them to know is that there are people here that are trying to help their children. And that's when, when I go into a village and I'll first meet people, I'll say, look, the reason I'm here is I want the same thing for your kids that I want for my kids. And I've been doing this for 30 years, William, and I always ask moms what they want. And every single time, dads too, but moms are the ones we usually are in contact with. Whether I'm in Mississippi or Malawi or Mumbai, anywhere in the world, they say the exact same things. They say, I want my kids to be healthy. And either I want my kids to go to school or I want my kids to do, to have a good life, to be able to do well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you have kids or not, but I do. And it's like, that's all I want for my kids. I want them to be healthy and be able to have a good life, be able to do something with their lives. So people are not that different. Our customs, our language, our food.
Yes.
But our emotionality, what drives us, our hearts are pretty much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 3 teenage daughters, so.
Okay, well, you're in the thick of it.
I'm right in the thick of it. Absolutely. So Howard, with that and on the emotional component, I mean, you probably have a gazillion testimonials, but over the course of 30 years, what are a couple that just it was the peak of emotion or the peak of validation for you? And again, you probably got dozens of stories per day from around the world you could draw from, but what were one of those 2 that were just even beyond those great stories, which if people had that more in their day would be great, just in life, but you're getting this constant validation because of all the great work Vitamin Angels is doing. But what are those 2 or 3 ones that were just like, took you beyond the stratosphere emotionally?
Well, 2 of the ones that really hit me hard. I mean, the one of them was really, really rough at the very beginning, one of my first trips to India. And this was honestly before the highway system was built. So it was 12-hour overnight train rides. I mean, it was bare bones, and we were, just going nickel by nickel at that point. But I went up to Gujarat, north of Mumbai, and went to a eye hospital run by Dr. Doshi, who was this lovely, lovely ophthalmologist that had been doing eye care for the rural poor for many years. And on the second day I was there, he wanted to show me the hospital, and it was a bare bones hospital. I mean, some of the equipment was held together with wire, and paint was peeling from the walls, and there was just all these people there that he had done eye surgeries for. I remember we were on the second floor, and we walked to the end of the hall and walked into this room, and this young dad who was probably 21 was holding his young son, probably, I'm guessing, 16-month-old toddler, and the boy was completely blind. I mean, the opacity is it was gone. There was nothing there. And Dr. Doshi told me that it was from vitamin A deficiency, that's what had caused it. And I knew, I was a dad myself at that time. I still am, obviously. Mm-hmm. And the thought of, I knew that the dad would never, ever leave the child. I knew he would always be taken care of. But I just thought of what a burden it was for that family and the community and the child And it was so unnecessary. I thought, wow, if we would have gotten here 6 months earlier, it could have been completely prevented. Fast forward to some years later, Jim Hamilton, who's now my chair, who was running DSM at the time, which is a raw material supplier, one of the largest in the world, one of the largest vitamin A suppliers in the world. And as I mentioned, I had learned that vitamin A was, this product that could prevent vitamin A deficiency, childhood blindness. So we were doing distributions all over India. It was Jim's first time in the field. I mean, he had been in the industry for 23 years. He was running the largest vitamin A distributor in the world. And
they're kind of a big deal, DSM. They're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and he had never seen it. He had never actually, we were going to some, I remember one of the first nights we were there, we had him up in a hotel, which I used to call 1.5-star hotels. I mean, it was funky. I mean, it was, they put a bucket of warm water outside your room in the morning to wash with. I mean, it was minimal. And Jim came out that first morning. He said, "Howard, this is a little bit rough for me." He said, "I'm used to staying in 5-star hotels." And I said, "Well, this is a good experience for you." But we were in this little town called Siliguri. And I think it was around the bricklaying region. A lot, when England was in India, there was a lot of bricks that were built, and they would have these big ovens, and kids would go underground and lay out the bricks. And we were there because the air would be horrible there, and we were there just to help the kids and the moms get some basic supplementation. And one of them was a vitamin A product. And I remember we were in Siliguri, and Shilpa, who was our country director at that time, all of a sudden signaled me to come over, and I grabbed Jim's arm. We went over, and she said, "See?" And she was standing next to this 6-year-old boy, and both of his eyes had this clouded opacity. I mean, it was just kind of starting to cover his eye. And she said, "He'll be blind within 6 months." If we had not been here today, he would have been blind. And we gave him vitamin A, and I'm sure he was fine after that. But that was that juxtaposition of those two experiences were just like really got my attention. Again, as a parent, I thought that child's life now is going to be changed. They're not going to have to struggle with, how are they going to even help, their family. And I was in a small village in Guatemala some years ago, and we were talking to this woman whose daughters had been really helped for Vitamin Angels. And I said, I speak all over the world. I said, if there's anything you want me to tell our donors when I'm talking to them, let me know and I'll tell them. And she looked at me and she said, yeah. She said, "Tell them thank you that God planted in your hearts to come help people." I thought, okay, I'm good for another 10 years. I thought, well,
that's right.
That's it, and the people we're seeing, nobody else goes to see. I mean, these people are not getting help from the governments usually. They're not getting help from other. We're seeing, we call reaching the unreachable. We want to see the people that are not getting served. And, the one thing people always tell us while we're there, they say, "Please come back. Please don't stop coming back." And a lot of relief groups who are very well-intentioned, they'll do something for a year or 2 or 3, and then they're gone. And people feel like, well, I guess I'm not that important. I guess I don't really care. Vitamin Angels, we tell our donors, once you become a partner with us, minimum of 3 to 5-year commitment, because that's when the kids need us. I mean, the kids are vulnerable for the first 5 years of their lives as their immune systems are developing. We can't go in there. We're not going to go in there and leave, after the first or second. Like we're committed. And so we want you to be committed. Unfortunately, a lot of donors who are with us on day one are still with us today. So we're lucky and very, very thankful.
And in terms of the donations and contributions, is it predominantly corporate, or can consumers also contribute? Obviously, some consumers or individuals can't sign up for 5 years, but is there a sort of a micro gift or micro donation that individuals can give to the cause? A vehicle
Oh, absolutely. And there are, I mean, a lot of our donors are businesses and corporations, and we're incredibly thankful. And we have a lot of individuals. And I mean, people, will run a race, do a marathon, or give their birthday to us, or, people have given their weddings to us and ask people to donate. It doesn't take a lot. It's to reach a child for a year with vitamin A is 25 cents. So give us $1, we can reach 4 kids. If you want to go big, you want to give us $10, that's 40 kids. To reach a woman for her pregnancy with prenatals, and this is one of our newest programs, which we're really excited about, MMS, which is multiple micronutrient supplements, which has a gigantic impact. Again, just like vitamin A, just gigantic. It's $5, so $25, and 5 women are going to have good pregnancy and a healthy baby. And it's very doable. I mean, the nice thing about nutrition interventions is that they're really cost effective, is that it's not if you think about a pregnancy and think about how much food a woman needs for her pregnancy, and then the complexity of, first growing it, but also, or even buying it, but just getting it shipped and keeping it fresh and getting it distributed, it would be enormous. But a bottle of prenatal vitamins, or MMS, you can fit in a fanny pack, and you could take that anywhere in the world. And when we go into these villages, we'll go into places where women are still, they'll come to the first distribution, and I'll see them reaching into their purse sometimes and taking out something to bite on. And what it is it's a clump of dirt, that their only source of minerals is soil. And we go in, and within soil.
Wow. I said, wow.
And and it was in this country too. We're not immune to it. I mean, this was at turn of the century. That was happening in the U.S. too. But within a week or two after taking the supplements, they're not craving soil anymore, because their bodies are getting the nutrition they need. And women who, they'll say, my first baby was 3 pounds or 4 pounds, we'll get them supplements, and they'll have 5 or 6 or 7 pound babies. And women who are always sick during the pregnancy, after we get them supplements, they'll say, I felt great. I worked in the garden until right before I delivered. Women will say, well, my kid doesn't, this child doesn't get sick like my other kids did. And what's amazing to me is that nothing else has changed. They still live in the same spot. They still are eating the same, basic diet. Their economics, they haven't made a lot more money, but they've gotten this one key ingredient that makes a difference. And it's a profound difference. I mean, I mentioned before, MMS, which is multiple micronutrient supplements, which is just a multiple prenatal, which is our big new program we started in 2018. The research shows that for anemic women, and 38% of the pregnant population globally has been anemic, which is anemia is serious for the baby, because it's the iron that impacts the hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen, gets rid of the waste. That getting an anemic woman a multiple prenatal compared to iron folic acid, not even compared to nothing, but compared to iron folic acid, which has been the standard recommendation from WHO and governments for decades now. The multiple shows a 29% reduction in infant mortality at 6 months. So that's almost a third. I mean, that's only from one thing, just get them the MMS, the multiple prenatal, and that's the kind of impact you can have. So I mean, think about that, for a $5 intervention, That's pretty dramatic. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And that's, again, when I talking to colleagues in the industry or consumers, I say, you know, what else can you do that's going to change lives, you know, on such a scale, and really is going to, you know, change the opportunity for a family or for, you know, a country, or for, and it's just the fact that you know 7,000 newborns are going to die today, and that every government in the world is not saying we've got to, you know, this is a crisis and we've got to deal with this like a crisis. We got to be intervening here and really getting, you know, better antenatal care for these women, and a key component of that has got to be nutrition.
So Howard, in your estimation then, with, you know, 30 years of this and building this up, what are some of the regions that you find or have found are starting to do better, or where statistics, the nasty statistics have dropped off because of your intervention and it's really taken hold? It's more than just a village here, a village there. What are some of the regions where you've found this intervention, when properly applied in a consistent, standardized manner, has really moved the needle?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the good news is that things have dramatically improved since we started in '94, but even before that. I mean, in 1960 was the first time they did statistics on how many children under 5 were dying every year. And remember that, you know, a child's not born with an intact immune system. It develops in response to the environment. And so the younger the child, the more vulnerable. So most children who die, who do not make it, it's the under 5s. And within the under 5s, it's the under 1s. And within the under 1s, it's the first 30 days. And within the first 30 days, it's the first 24 hours. So the younger the child, the more at risk they are. In 1960, when they first started counting, it was incredibly high. I mean, it was about 20 million children a year were not making it. It's extraordinary amount. I mean, it's like 50,000 a day. I mean, it's as many as died in the Vietnam War every day. And in 1994, we started Vitamin Angels. That number had dropped to about 12 million, I think 12.1 in '94. Today, it's around 5. It's probably a little bit under 5 million. So, and what's interesting is that during that time period, during those 60 years, the population of the world has doubled. It's gone from 3 billion to 7 billion, but the number of children dying has gone from 20 down to 5. So it's dropped by 3/4, you know, at a time. And when they look at the reasons why, you know, it's immunizations and vaccinations, it's mosquito nets for malaria, it's for promoting exclusive breastfeeding, and it's vitamin supplementation. I mean, it's those are the, you know, that's like the pantheon of interventions that have really worked. So things are getting better in the countries that we're in. We see healthier kids and healthier babies. I mean, it's quite dramatic. When we first started doing this work, you would go to a country often, and you'd see a child. I would see a child, a young boy. Let's say that I would swear that child was maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I'd say, "How old are you?" And they say, "Well, I'm 15. And you'd be like, "There's no way you could be 15. And I remember a friend who ran a relief group saying that people, when they would come into their country, they say, "Wow, you know, these people seem small." And somebody would say, "Oh, well, they're just born small." And it was like, it was a complete lie. It was just because they've been generationally malnourished. I mean, you could, you know, kids, when adoption programs were big, like in countries like Guatemala, I remember, that had a big adoption program, that the kids that were adopted, that were brought like to the US and given really good nutrition, when they would go back to see their biological siblings, same family, from same country, they would put them next to each other, and there would be like a 1 or 2 head difference between the kids. I mean, you could draw a median line on a school wall, and all the kids that stayed in country and did not get good nutrition would be about a head below the median line, and the kids that were raised outside and given good nutrition would be about a head above it. And that's true all over the world. So we've prioritized countries that have the biggest problems, and there we've seen the biggest improvements. It's just it's been actually really exciting. We're actually in discussions and work with about 20 governments right now around the world to change their national health policies, and we see that that kids they're not getting sick as often, that parents have more hope, that things are just improving, and that it's easy to think sometimes that the world is really bad place, and there are problems that need to be solved, and obviously climate change and the environment are one of them, but nutrition is one of the ones that is easily solvable, and with not only Vitamin Angels, but with other people that are solving it in different ways also. I mean, there's fortification programs and feeding programs, that the impact is tremendous. I mean, the impact is kids they're structurally bigger, cognitively they do better, they get sick less often, they're more, I mean, you talk to a teacher before and after a supplement or a nutrition program goes into their schools, and they're the biggest, they'll say, look, they couldn't focus before, they were always distracted, they were always falling asleep, and now that, we started a supplement program, we started a breakfast program, a lunch program, and they're awake and they're doing, that's the opportunity. I mean, when we go into a village or work with a partner, and the group that we're working with, the agency, the doctor or the nurses actually grew up in those villages, you see that it's like there's a chance to really change things. There's a real chance to change things. When we
what a great model too, to have those people working in those communities.
Yeah, and it's possible. We work in Kenya a lot. It's a priority country, and I remember going to Eldoret, we had started working with our friend Jim Lemons, who was a neonatologist, and he had started a mother and baby hospital there. He's from Indiana, and they really needed supplements, and we got them supplements. And I remember he took us right next door his Moy Teaching Hospital, and we went over there for a tour, and he told me that when they had started Moy Teaching Hospital, the doctor who started it, who's from the same Indiana, the same with Jim, said that one day this hospital will all be run by Kenyans, and people laughed and they said it was not possible. When we went there, so that was started around 1990. We went there in 2008, so about 18 years later. Every doctor, every nurse, every lab technician, every janitor, every board of director, every single person was a Kenyan. They were running the hospital. They had graduated, I think, their 25th class of doctors. So change is possible if you really commit to it, if you're really serious and you want to see a change. It's exciting when you see it. It's like, wow, that's what sustainability is about. And when you're doing this work, there are two things you always are up against. Is it scalable, and is it sustainable? Because if it's not scalable, it'll work in the village, but it'll never work at the state level or the country level. And if it's not sustainable, like I told you before, you're going to go in there, get it started, and then it won't continue. When you see something like the Moy Teaching Hospital, the Riley Mother and Baby Hospital, that's all being run by the people in country, that's true sustainability. That's what something that really can last and really make a long-term difference in so many lives.
Absolutely. No, very intriguing, fantastic story. And that in particular is a fantastic model. So just as we wrap up here, Howard, and you touched on this a bit too, what is the future 30 years of Vitamin Angels? Where do you see this going? What is your dream for the next little while in terms of how it's going to expand? Is it just more of the same and reaching more people? And that's obviously a very worthy endeavor, and that's what's going to grow or fulfill your time as Vitamin Angels continues to make such a huge difference in the world? Or is it adding on to the model with different views or different angles in education or other areas? What do you see as the visionary and entrepreneurial spirit behind Vitamin Angels?
Yeah, it's actually both. I mean, we obviously always want to reach more women and children who are not getting served, but we also really want to have more impact. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the impact and making a difference. So as we grow, as we find new interventions that we think are really going to have a tremendous difference, we want to keep adding them to, our quiver and be able to kind of do more. So in 2018, when I saw the research on multiple micronutrients, MMS, multiple prenatals, it was obvious that, well, that had to be a global campaign. Now we're starting to do mycin, which is maternal and infant young child nutrition. And we realized that that could also add to the effectiveness of what we're doing. We're looking at a few of the other supplement interventions. So whenever we see, we're a small organization. Relatively speaking to a lot of the big players that are out there, we have 100 people. And we're reaching, this year, 70 million women and children in 70 countries in every state in the United States. So relatively, we're small. We have to be focused on not adding too much too soon, but adding enough that we can really do well. And so, that's been a lot of our work, especially in the last 4 years, is to just really start building our competency and really start just building, what we can kind of offer. And the best way, we didn't have an implementation science division, not that long ago. Now that's a part of what we're doing. So when we're going into a country, we're not just handing out supplements. We're not just, we're also doing a landscape analysis and looking at the situation across the country and realizing what the barriers to access are. Are they accessibility? Are they availability? Are they knowledge? Do people just not know? Are they accepted? Is there some kind of prejudice or fear about supplements? And then, of course, are they affordable? And start to really work with the governments and other agencies to really form together, to collaborate, that we could all deal with different parts of the issue. So I think we're going to continue to kind of just, look for what's possible. And then because we are kind of known now, and we do have all these connections, I think that our ability to reach that end user, to reach that mother and child, will just kind of open up more doors. We just formed a partnership, not a partnership, but a collaboration with Johns Hopkins in the last year. And so that's going to open up a lot of doors just by doing more research that's going to get published and kind of get known, that we're serious, that we really do want to make a difference. We want to change the policy at World Health Organization to recommend multiple prenatals instead of IFA. They're still recommending IFA. They're saying MMS is okay with certain conditions. We want to kind of take the qualifier out of that and say MMS should be the recommendation because it's by far the most effective intervention for pregnant women.
Amazing. Well, Howard, I can't thank you enough for your time today and all the amazing work you and your team and Vitamin Angels has done globally. The conversation was very illuminating. Really appreciated it. Obviously, I've known Vitamin Angels and heard of them, but it's great to dig deeper and get in there on some of these details. Absolutely fascinating. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciated the opportunity.
Thank you for joining the NutraStrong Campfire Nutrition Podcast. We hope you found this episode both educational and fun. Hope to see you again soon. If you want to check us out further, you can go to nutrasource.ca or go to certifications.nutrasource.ca. Thank you kindly, and I hope you have a great day. Bye for now.